All right, let's begin. We're going to conduct a doctrinal analysis of the suppression of the Cartagena uprising, which took place from the 5th to the 7th of March, 1939. Our focus today is squarely on the operational and strategic dimensions of this absolutely critical late war event.
Now, the intelligence for this briefing, it's all derived from the military historical project Batallas Guerra Civil, which was compiled by Colonel F.J. Victor Rodrigo. This is what provides the rigorous doctrinal framework for our entire analysis.
So here's how we're going to break this down. We'll proceed chronologically through 6 distinct phases. We'll start with the initial situation on March 5th. Then we'll cover the Republican counterattack, the combat inside the city, the failed nationalist relief effort, the final collapse of the uprising, and we'll wrap it all up with the strategic assessment.
All right, moving to Phase 1. We'll begin on the afternoon of March 5th to really examine the tactical posture of the rebel forces inside Cartagena.
Now, this map, it reveals a critical disparity between what people thought was happening and what was actually happening. You see, the Republican fleet has sailed, and they did so believing Cartagena was falling to a major nationalist offensive. But the truth? Well, the truth is that General Barrio-Nuevo's rebel forces control only parts of the city. They're isolated, with no significant land or naval forces anywhere nearby. Their hold is precarious, to say the least.
This assessment really lays bare the rebels' profound weakness. We're talking about a force with limited small arms, coastal batteries that are ill-suited for any kind of urban combat, and virtually no cohesive organizational structure. Their personnel are largely young and untrained, and a lot of their commanders remain passive. Their entire strategy, their entire hope, hinges on one single factor: the rapid arrival of nationalist reinforcements.
So, you have this incredible vulnerability. And that, of course, prompts an immediate and decisive loyalist countermove. Let's analyze the Republican response, which was led by the CCVI Mixed Brigade.
And the Republican response is incredibly swift. During the night of March 5th, Major Artemio Precioso puts the CCVI Brigade in motion. And this is a combined arms force. It incorporates armored elements, assault troops, and Air Force contingents, all advancing with one clear objective: retake the naval base.
This action right here highlights a key doctrinal principle: information warfare. Before even launching a major assault, Precioso's first objective is the radio station in the Los Dolores district. By 11:35 in the morning, it's back in government hands. This allows them to immediately counter rebel messaging and broadcast the success of the loyalist advance, effectively seizing control of the entire narrative.
You know, losing that radio station really marks a turning point. So now let's examine the combat as it develops and the subsequent isolation of the rebel forces. Now, Precioso's advance is methodical. It's not reckless. He's aware of the uncertain situation inside the city. But this steady pressure, combined with the loss of his main propaganda tool, places General Barrio-Nuevo in an absolutely critical position. He's losing command and control, and his communications are limited to just 2 transmitters that are under constant fire.
And this reality is laid bare in his own communications. At 3:30 in the afternoon on the 5th, he sends this urgent message to Nationalist High Command. We await the urgent landing of Nationalist troops. Look, this isn't a request, it's a declaration of dependence. Without external intervention, the uprising is doomed.
By late afternoon, Precioso's forces, led by light tanks, are penetrating the city. They're seizing high-value targets, including the military command, which completely severs the rebels' military telephone network. They begin systematically isolating the remaining pockets of resistance in the arsenal, the artillery park, and the naval base command. The city is being retaken block by block.
Okay, so now we're into the next phase. On March 6th, the rebels' only hope finally appears on the horizon. But, as we're about to see, it proves to be too little, too late.
A nationalist flotilla carrying a landing force arrives off the coast, but the tactical situation they find makes an amphibious assault simply impossible. Why? Because Precioso's forces had prioritized securing the coastal batteries. There's an active artillery duel underway, and the landing zone is firmly under Loyalist control. That window of opportunity has slammed shut. And Barrio-Nuevo's communications from the 6th? Well, they paint a very grim picture of this collapse. At 8:30 in the morning, he's desperately asking the offshore fleet to shell Republican positions in the Guterres Castle. By the afternoon, his final message is a plea for just 300 men to reinforce the arsenal, which is on the verge of falling. It's a clear signal of impending defeat.
And that brings us to the final phase of the operation on March 7th, the reduction of the very last rebel strongholds.
The situation you see on the map here is terminal. 3 final redoubts remain:
the artillery park, the naval base, and Conception Castle. They are completely cut off from each other and from the outside world, with no water, no electricity, and no communications. The siege is tightening. At noon on March 7th, Loyalist forces launch an overwhelming final assault on the artillery park. The defense collapses. General Barrionuevo is taken prisoner. For all intents and purposes, the Cartagena uprising is over.
So, let's assess the outcome. We'll conclude this briefing with an analysis of the strategic balance, which, as you'll see, reveals a profound and tragic paradox.
Tactically, the results are crystal clear. The rebel commanders are either killed, captured, or have fled. But the single most important consequence of this entire event, the thing that overshadows all the fighting, was the flight of the Republican fleet from the harbor on day one. This quote from the Republican minister Álvarez del Valle really underscores the strategic catastrophe. He later wrote that the fleet's departure deprived the Republic of a vital means of resistance, and, maybe more importantly, its only viable method for a large-scale evacuation in the face of a final defeat.
And here lies the ultimate paradox. Major Precioso wins a decisive tactical victory in the name of Prime Minister Negrin's government. But by the time the fighting is over, Negrin and his communist allies have already fled Spain. The victory is inherited by his political enemies, Casado's council in Madrid, who themselves would soon be fighting Precioso's communist-aligned units.
For a more detailed, in-depth analysis of this and other operations, we refer you to the source material over at batallasguerracivil.es.
This concludes our briefing, but it leaves us with one final question for strategic consideration. Was this single event, the panicked, unnecessary flight of the Republican fleet, the truly decisive factor that sealed the fate of the Republic and precluded any possibility of an organized end to the war?